Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more esoterica. Today we're diving back into the works of Carl Jung. This is Mysterium Conjuntionis. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material, the link for my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly, and the links to get in contact with me or support the channel directly in the box down below so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and continue our exploration of the Mysterium Conjuntionis with the conclusion of Chapter 4, which is Part 9, Regina, the Queen. We have met the figure of the Queen so often in the course of our exposition that we need say only a few words about her here. We have seen that, as Luna, she is the archetypal companion of soul. Together, they form the classic alchemical syzygy, signifying on the one hand gold and silver, or something of the kind, and on the other, the heavenly pair described in Aurora Consurgens. We have talked quite extensively, right? Today is going to be a rather short one. There's only 5 pages. Most of this information we've already gone through. It is more of a review than anything. The Queen is the counterpart, right? We talk about, I'm going to use my example because this is my example. Right, this is my book. These 7 dots in the middle represent these 7 internal chakras. And this one big circle on the outside represents the external chakra. The external chakra is the divine chakra. It is composed of 2 parts, the masculine penetrative force that creates and the feminine absorptive force that generates. These 2 together form the Holy Spirit, right? They are active components of the Holy Spirit. It's the best way of looking at it. This is the king at the top, the white light that penetrates the void. This is the queen at the bottom, the darkness that absorbs that penetration. That is what these archetypes symbolize. It is bringing the balance within yourself, both the masculine and the feminine traits, into accordance. Masculine and feminine in this particular situation is kind of a misnomer. It is anthropomorphizing, but it's the easy way to understand it, right? It is the positive and negative. It is the good and the bad, the creative and the destructive, right? These are opposite ends of a coin, right? And the balance in between the coin is what allows you to use it correctly. What I talk about in this book is how to achieve that, how to get to the point of balance within yourself so that you can accomplish some quite miraculous things. All right, back to the text. Therefore, I will rise and go into the city, seeking in the streets and the broad ways a chaste virgin to espouse, comely in face, more comely in body, and most comely in her garments, that she may roll back the stone from the door of my sepulchre and give me wings like a dove, and I will fly with her into heaven, and then say, I live forever, and will rest in her, for the queen stood on my right hand in gilded clothing, surrounded with variety. O queen of the heights, arise, make haste, my love, my spouse. Speak, beloved, to thy lover, who and of what kind, and how great thou art. My beloved, who is ruddy, hath spoken to me, he hath sought and besought. I am the flower of the field and the lily of the valleys. I am the mother of fair love, and of fear, and of knowledge, and of holy hope. As the fruitful vine I have brought forth a pleasant odor, and my flowers are the fruit and honor of riches. I am the bed of my beloved, wounding his heart with one of my eyes, and with one hair of my neck. I am the sweet smell of ointments, giving an odor above all aromatical spices, and like unto cinnamon and balsam and chosen myrrh. We missed footnote 416. We will get that in 417. 416 was from up here where it was talking about something of the kind, the syzygy between the 2. Hoagland, so also the king and queen are called the composite of the stone, That would be the Philosopher's Stone, right? This green ball here in the middle symbolizes that. It binds together the as below Trinity and the as above Trinity into the Trinity of completion. Thus, man and woman are called male and female because of their union in action and passion. Rosinus says, the secret of the art of gold consists in the male and the female. That is, bringing into accordance these powers. 417 is just from a parable we will be back at 420, baby. All right. As far as this goes, right, I don't really care for the analogy, right? This is anthropomorphizing the forces. It is giving familiarity, so okay, whatever. But therefore I will rise and go into the city, seeking in the streets and broad ways a chaste virgin to espouse, comely in face and more comely in body and most comely in her garments. What? Right? That is paying attention to the superficial. At best, that is looking for a spouse based upon superficial things. A chaste virgin, that's not as superficial, right? Somebody that has morals and ethics and isn't just throwing their body around. Okay, granted. But comely in face, comely in body, and comely in her garments means that she's pretty, right? And everybody wants an attractive spouse. That's not the point. The point is that should not be the most important part of any relationship that you form. It should not be based upon aesthetics. Aesthetics can change quite drastically. It should be based upon something deeper, something more meaningful. This is not saying that, right? This is just going out and finding some virgin who happens to look pretty. I don't particularly care for that at all. Right? And that's not just in the searching for a spouse aspect of it, but in the spiritual side of it too. This is giving lip service to what you're doing, but not really diving in and digging in and doing the hard parts, right? This is chasing the superficial. It's comely of face, it's comely of body, it's comely of garments. It means it's easy. It's not easy. Right? Now this, that she may roll back the stone from the door of my sepulchre, that is a direct trying to shoehorn in some Christianity, right? There is no real reason for that at all outside of the reverence for Jesus at all, right? There is zero reason for this to be involved in this at all. Give me wings like a dove. However, there is reason, right? We have talked before about the doves. There is the dove with feathers and there's the dove without feathers. That represents the masculine and the feminine exactly the same way that the light and the dark does. I will fly with her into heaven and then say I live forever and will rest in her. Most of this is, right, making the allotments for Christianity, right? That was the whole point of putting the stone in the sepulchre. That is because of the Christianity that was intrinsic in the time, right? Aurora Consurgens was the 1700s, I believe. I haven't read that one yet. I'm not positive. And so there is a lot of working around the Catholic Church that is involved in any of these works. Most of this is going to be with that, right? Fly with her into heaven. Okay, right? That is part of the experience, kind of, right? It is not the biblical heaven, but it is the reunification with the Spirit, which is in the eternal place, which can be thought of as heaven. No streets of gold, but the reunification of spirits. You get to meet with your beloveds that left, right? Those type of things, that's where that takes place. So fine. I live forever and will rest in her. That is the spirit that is not mortal, right? That is a big deal. And you are not meant to try for immortality on the planet. You should be taking care of yourself in such a way that you will live as long as you possibly can, right? You shouldn't be over-consuming anything, food, drink, sex, anything. You should be consuming it, right? It should be part of your life. That is part of the experience. But it is not for you to live forever, right? You are here for a limited amount of time, and that is part of the experience. All right? Even when the spiritual side of things, the things that I do, the things that I talk about, this is not aimed at the eternal directly, right? This is aimed at doing the best I can in the job that I was assigned here on this planet, here in real time. If you are focusing all of your attention upon that as a reward, that's a little bit greedy. Right? I quoted in this book, L.E. Modest did when he said, if you do something with the expectation of being rewarded, that is greed. Right? And so if you are doing things with the expectation that that is your key to heaven, then that is not going to be the key to heaven. Right? That is greed, and that is going to drag you down in the wrong direction. Your life should be balanced. Your soul is already eternal, and so you don't have to worry about that. There is no burning pit of hell for you to be cast into because you said a swear word one time, or that you drank a little bit too much. That is not what's going to happen. Unless you create that for yourself, that is not the experience. Now, it is possible to experience that if that is what you have chosen to do. But if you are not pointed in that direction, then you will just return to the eternal, like almost everybody else ever has in the entirety of ever. They came from the eternal, they will return to the eternal one way or the other. Your focus should be here. Your focus should be on improving your life and the lives of all the people around you to the best of your ability, as hard as you can, not resting forever in her until you get to the spirit, which is the eternity. Gilded clothing, that is prideful. Right? Outside of, there's the golden flower that unfolds, which is part of the process. That can be looked at as gilded. But this is looking at the queen as an entity, and the entity as being gilded. She is comely, she is garbed well, and because of that, that is a little bit prideful. You are looking for the pretty one instead of the good one. You are looking for pretty clothes instead of good clothes. You are looking for the pretty city instead of the good city. Right? This is a major problem. Right? The whole streets of gold that is heaven, that is a little bit prideful. There is no real reason for God to need to make an entire city out of gold. That is some greed and from pride and who knows what else mixed in there. My beloved who is ruddy is a direct reference to the alchemical process, right? The feminine is considered to be the darker element by me, but it's not by everybody else. And I consider it to be black, which would be the void. Other people see it more of a red, right? The white is fairly universal as the masculine power. The feminine being described as red, that is a thing. But there is a very deep red that is on the bottom end of the electromagnetic spectrum here. That is almost into infrared, which is below red, and that can appear black. And so that can be that there is a confusion about that actually being black as opposed to red. And again, even the colors, right? I stand on the distribution of these colors for a variety of reasons, but that doesn't mean that it's true. It means that that is my belief upon them. It is where I stand, but it is something that is adjustable, right? Somebody else may see them in exactly the opposite way. That is perfectly fine. And the rest of this is just kind of a descriptor of feminine in general, right? The mother of fair love and of fear and knowledge of holy hope. The fruitful vine, like this is all less of the alchemical reference. Like there's still some of it in there, but less, right? This is bringing to attention the feminine traits that you should probably nurture, right? The mother of love, that's definitely a trait that you want to nurture, even if you're a dude, right? The knowledge of fear, and the knowledge of hope and despair, or is one of the very top up here, right? That is the virtues and vice, right? Hope and despair are two ends of that. The mother can be considered then the source for that. That is arbitrary. Yeah, and so this is just more of a description than anything else. Back to the text. The prototype of this spiritual mini is the relationship of King Solomon to the Queen of Sheba, which is definitely an interesting one to dive into. He was not the first Israelite to take an attraction for dark meat. You should check out what Moses did, the contention that caused in the camp. Johannes Gracius says of the white dove that is hidden in the lead, "This is the chaste, wise, and rich Queen of Sheba, veiled in white, who was willing to give herself to none but King Solomon. No human heart can sufficiently investigate all this. 418. We'll be right back. That is Area Arcana. That is not in the book. That is not in the book. Right? We read through Kings and Chronicles in their entirety. We dealt with the Queen of Sheba, and she did come, and she got special favors, right? But she was not willing to give herself to none but King Solomon. That didn't happen. Right? It didn't. She came to him, they exchanged knowledge, they may have even had sexual relations. But she left. She went back to her country with the Shamir, by the way, which is a whole thing that people overlook in that particular situation. And so she came and she got her objective, and then she left. There is no reason to say that she gave herself to none but King Solomon. None. Right? She may have been veiled in white. I don't think that was said either. You have the virgin earth. Give her a husband who is fitting for her. She is the Queen of Sheba. Hence there is a need of a king crowned with a diadem. Where shall we find him? We see how the heavenly sun gives of his splendor to all other bodies, and the earthly or mineral sun will do likewise, when he is set in his own heaven, which is named the Queen of Sheba, who came from the ends of the earth to behold the glory of Solomon. So too our Mercury has left his own lands, and clothed himself with the fairest garments of white, and has given himself to Solomon, and not to any other who is a stranger, extraneous, and impure. This is probably talking more about Mercurius. Right? Mercurius is the combination of the two. Mercury is more of the red. It is more of the feminine, even though Mercury is attributed as a masculine planet. Mercurius, right here, right, is both. Right? We have discussed that in some detail. That is not understood completely by Jung. And so, is there anything I really need to talk about in this? I don't think so. I mean, the virgin earth who is fit for her, the Queen of Sheba, the king crowned with the diadem. Now that would be like not necessarily a physical crown. Right? There is the aura. Right? You have a crown chakra which sticks out. It's purple, almost as if that was, the color of royalty or something. And then there is that, but it is not like a white diadem or anything. It glows. Some of it's bright, some of it's dark, but it is mostly purple, violet even. There is a reason why purple is attached to the kingly stature. And then they have Mercury here, which is more of a representative of the feminine in the planetary sense. And then you have Mercurius, which is the combination of the two, and that can get a little bit confusing, right? Mercury and Mercurius are not necessarily the same thing. Here, Mercurius in feminine form is the queen, and she is the heaven wherein the sun shines. She is thus thought of as a medium surrounding the sun. The void, even, right? The space between, even, right? There is before the beginning, there was the void, infinite and without form, and God was. And then God decided to become, and so created and limited himself from the infinite into the finite. The finite is the light. The finite is the creation. The finite is the things that you can put your hands upon. The void is the potential. The void is the unformed. The void is the feminine potential for creation. And so the sun, quite literally, is the masculine effect, and the feminine, quite literally, is the space that surrounds the sun. And so this is a great example. A man encompassed by a woman, as was said of Christ, and that's where you fuck up. 420. St. Gregory, Mylius says of God, whom the divine Plato declared to dwell in the substance of fire, meaning thereby the unspeakable splendor of God in himself and the love that surrounds him. Fire is the representative of Logos. Logos is change. We just did, before the beginning, there was God, and God was infinite and without form, the void. And then he decided to create, and he went from the infinite into the finite, limited himself from God into the Spirit. The Spirit is composed entirely of God, but it is not God in his entirety. God created it. That spirit, that moment when it was created, everything was created, all of the elements in perfect balance with no interaction, perfectly still. That was the beginning. And then God said, I am the light, and became the light, and the light was good. And things started combining. There was heat, there was motion, there was the combination of the elements. That is fire, right? That speaking of the I am was the word of creation. And the word of creation is the exact same thing that is meant by the logos. It is not a person, but instead the entirety of change, motion, life, light, and heat. Every bit of it, all of it is logos. The parts that are missing it is just the spirit in potential. And so the substance of fire that the divine dwells in is literally the logos, the voice and word of change, the I am spoken into creation. Never a singular person ever at any point in time. Every person is a representative of it. The logos is what allows your food to turn into fuel, your breath to make your body work. Right? It is the thing that sends the electrical signals to wiggle your fingers when you, the soul, decide to do so. And so it is indeed dwelling inside the substance of fire, but not exclusively. It's around me right now. There is heat, change, and motion occurring around me. When I speak, I create a toroid around myself. That is the logos in action. My breath comes out and it heats the room, causing condensation. That is the logos in action. That is quite literally using the power of creation. On a cold day, if you walk out and you go, and that cloud goes out, that is you using the logos intentionally to change the situation. You can do that on the micro and the macro level. And so this, again, is a good reference. Even though it is not a good reference right here, right? A man encompassed by a woman, as was said of Christ. That doesn't matter. It does not matter that it was said of Christ. Every man has been encompassed by a woman. Unless you're a test tube baby grown in an artificial womb, you resided in a woman at one point in time. Every single one of us, not somebody that thought they were a woman, but somebody that was born an actual woman. And so there is no difference. I don't believe in the virgin birth. I don't believe that there was a prophecy for the virgin birth. See Isaiah. And so, for me, this is completely arbitrary. There is no reason for this to have been included at all. But it is fitting that it is tied to this, or as Shiva in the embrace of Shakti. That is actually a better understanding of it than this would be. This medium has the nature of Mercurius, that paradoxical being, because it's not a being. Right? This medium has the nature of that paradoxical being whose one definable meaning is the unconscious. That is not true. 421, the spirit Mercurius. Right? We have talked before that Jung does not have the understanding of Mercurius. We figured that out as we were going through sulfur. Mercurius is quite literally both ends of the element. It is quite literally the entire coin of the divine. It is both the masculine and the feminine. That is why it is portrayed both as white and black. You are to use both of those in equal balance. The queen appears in the text as the maternal vessel of soul and as the aureole of the king, in example, as a crown. 422. Aurora Consurgens. I am the crown wherewith my beloved is crowned. In the Tractus Aureus de Lapide, the queen, at her apotheosis, holds a discourse in which she says, 424, adorned with a most excellent crown, composed of pure diamonds, probably refers to the wreath of stars about her head. If she is the void, would she be crowned with stars? I believe she would. After death, is life restored to me, poor as I am, where entrusted the treasures of the wise and mighty. Therefore I too can make the poor rich, give grace to the humble, and restore health to the sick. But I am not yet equal to my most beloved brother, the mighty king, who is yet to be raised from the dead. But when he comes, he will verily show that my words are the truth. This works, right? After death, life is restored to me. This works on a couple of different levels, right? When you are done with your temple, the body goes back to the void, right? It goes back to the potential for life for something else. When you die, you will decompose, and those components will be used to create life in a different form. So after death, life will be restored. But in addition to that, when you are done with your 5D navigation device and your soul returns to the eternal, that is an immediate return of life. It is not for punishment or necessarily even reward. It is for reassignment or reassimilation, depending upon you, right? You can either choose to reincarnate. It is a choice to be here. Or you can choose not to. It is freely, equally your choice there as well as here. I know, without a doubt, that I will be coming back, right? I'm not trying to escape, right? This is not a prison planet. I'm fully convinced that the next time I come back, I'm going to somehow maintain knowledge and come back with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more quickly, so that I can get to here a lot faster. Right? That is my goal on the next life. It is not to live in idleness on streets of gold. I find that to be wasteful at best. All right. Therefore, I too can make the poor rich, give grace to the humble, and restore health to the sick. But I am not yet equal to my most beloved brother, the mighty king, who is yet to be raised from the dead. Now this makes less sense to me, right? The logos, the king, is the breath of life. The spark that starts, right? It is the sperm that fertilizes the egg. And so without that, there is no coming back from the dead. It may be that without the joining together, there is no return from the dead for the masculine. But that is somewhat arbitrary of a designation. That masculine part of the soul is going to be eternal as well. And so this is an allegory, but not necessarily a good one for that. In this, the soror et sponsa, we can easily discern the analogy with the church, if that is what you are looking for, which I am not, and so to me there was no part of that was the church. It can be an individual within the church, but it is not the church, which, as the corpus mysticum, is the vessel for the anima Christi. This vessel is called by Penotus the Queen of Sheba, referring to the passage in Matthew 12:42, and also Luke 11:31. For she, the Queen of the South, came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. You know what Solomon's wisdom was? Collecting other people's wisdom, not necessarily possessing it himself. And I mean, to record it is wise, and even if you are recording it, then you are taking it within yourself, and it becomes part of your wisdom. But it's not like he came up with the Proverbs, right? That's not what happened. He collected the proverbs of those around him into a book, which was wise, but it wasn't necessarily the wisdom of Solomon. In this connection, I would like to mention a passage in the Speculum de Mysteriis, the Anonorus of Atum, which likewise refers to the Queen of the South. He says, 425 is just a reference to something else. John abandoned his bride and himself a virgin, followed the son of a virgin. You gonna make me rip my fucking eyeballs out. Not literally. But are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? Like, for real? He abandoned his bride and he was a virgin? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Is that what you are trying to convey to me right now, that John was a virgin? Where is that in the book? Where does it say anywheres in the book that John was a virgin? I'm not even sure that it says that he had a wife. It might. I'm not positive, but I'm fairly positive it did not say that he was a virgin. And if he had a wife, he was not a virgin. Period. The end. There was no prophecy of a virgin birth, so there was no son of a virgin either. That's annoying. And because of love for her, he despised the bond of the flesh. Christ loved him before all of the disciples. Well, there is definitely something that could be read into that relationship. Now, because of the love for this wife that he never had sex with, even though they were married, he despised the bond of the flesh because he loved her. He didn't want to have sex with her. Was she not comely enough? Were her garments not pretty? Is that what it was? Was she not pretty enough of face? Like, how do you get married before you meet Christ and then not have sex with her? Well, that, you know what that tells me? I mean, remember yesterday, right, in the video, I believe it was yesterday, we talked about there was absolutely no way that Christ did not get married and people listened to him. That it was completely antithetical to the entire Jewish tradition that a man would be listened to if he did not get married. It is literally impossible that Christ could be a Jewish teacher and be not married. It is not a possibility. The culture would not allow it. Even if he went on his mission, nobody would listen to him that he never had a bride. That is the truth. And so there is a major problem right there. And one of the things about that is this, right? He abandoned his bride, himself a virgin, and followed the son of a virgin because he despised the bond of the flesh. That is telling me that he wanted that authority, that respect from the people, but maybe he didn't want the attachments that came with that, right? Maybe he was one of those people that was born wanting to put a penis in their mouth. That is entirely possible. Many people are that way. Right? You don't just develop a taste for penis. You have to be born with that. You don't put one in your mouth unless it is something that you desire. And there are a lot of people that do desire that. That's not even to say that it is necessarily right. Right? I believe in copulation, being in sacred union, producing progeny. But I believe that God gives alternatives to that as well. And so we're good. This right here makes me think that he was gay, right? Because of the love for her, he despised the bond of the flesh. Before he met Christ, he got married to this woman and did not have sex with her. Well, then he was gay. That's all there is to that. If he did not have sex with his wife before he was told not to have sex with his wife, then he probably had a taste for penis. That is confirmed by several of the things, right? He laid upon Christ's breast. And look at the painting, and I know using the painting is not the correct way to do it, but there is a reason why in the Last Supper, Jesus has one of the disciples upon his breast. It is this disciple. And so maybe, right? Beards were a thing back then, and I ain't talking about this. That pissed somebody off, but again, I will refer you to the source material because I don't talk idly. And if you think that one pisses you off, you should go back and check out what happened between David, Jonathan, and Saul. You should go and check out that situation. For a while, the Queen of the South gave her body and her blood to the disciples. John lay in the bosom of Jesus and drank from that fount of wisdom. Which secret of the Word he afterward committed to the world? The Word, namely, which hidden in the Father, because in the bosom of Jesus are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. What a lie. 4:26. Colossians 2:3. So as to know the mystery of God the Father and of Christ Jesus, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. I will point out real quick that this Word, the very beginning of John, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. That was not Jesus. That was completely and utterly misconstrued by a zealot. Right? John was a zealot. That is a little bit different than just somebody who believes. right? He was above and beyond. If he was here today, he would be of the Pentecostal snake handling tradition. He was that person. And so there's a whole lot going on there, right? But the Word was not Jesus. If you think that it was, you should go back and do a word study. I've done one. You are more than welcome to check it out. If you link together Genesis, the first 2 chapters, with John, the first chapter, you might learn something. In the passage from the Tractus Aureus, it is the Queen of the South who is entrusted with the treasures of the wise and mighty, and in Honoris, she gives her body and blood to the disciples. This is another thing, right? We missed it right here, right? It said the Queen of the South gave her body and her blood to the disciples. Where the fuck was that at? Where was that at? Because the Queen of the South, if that is Sheba, and I do not believe that, gave her blood to the where? Where is that in the text? Give me the reference, because apparently I missed that. I missed that completely. I did not see anywheres in the New Testament where anybody else sacrificed their blood. I didn't see that anywhere. I only saw the one guy, and he was not happy about it. Right? He cried tears of blood trying to avoid giving that blood. And so, how? Where is the reference for this? That she gave her body and her blood to the disciples. I do not have a reference for that. Back to the text. In both cases, she seems to be identified with Jesus. Well, there you go. There you go. Obviously, she was Jesus. Was Jesus transsexual? Is that what happened? Was that why John was laying on his breast? Is that why they were such good friends? Is that why they disappeared in the darkness together? Is that why? Is that why he told him to leave your wife? Is that why? Because I'm going to tell you now, that whole abandon your wife thing, yeah, that might be a problem if you look at the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not commit adultery does not limit itself to sexual acts. Abandonment is adultery. Abandoning your vow before God to honor this person is a big deal. Like a very, very big deal. I've only taken, 3 vows now in my entire life. I took a vow, an oath, to serve my country way back in 1996. I took another vow, another oath, back in 2002 to my wife. We got married. I mean, we've been together for 26 years. We've been married for 22. And so that's 2 of them. And then the third one I gave to God, that I would serve him regardless of what had happened and how it went. I take those very seriously. Even though I did not comport myself in the way when I was in the Navy, I still hold myself to the vow of defending my country, even though I am not required by anyone external to do so. Right? I didn't act in accordance with that vow, but I still hold it today. I do not cheat on my wife, and I honor her. I am with her, and I'm here in my vow with God. If you make a vow, it is better to just say you will do it than to not do it, right? If you made a vow to someone to marry them, and then you just abandon them, that is a big, big deal. Like, massive deal. And I understand that their morals and ethics may have allowed that. They were allowed to have multiple wives still. But that's a problem. That is a moral problem. Not ethics. Ethics are the tribe. Moral is your decisions. And that is a problem. If John actually did abandon his wife, which is what it says, that is a problem. We can see from this how close was the thought of Christ androgyny. That is because it is a parable, at best, analogy, maybe. And how very much the queen and the king are one, in the sense that body and soul, or spirit and soul, are one. They are not. 427, we'll come back. The alchemists were in some doubt as to whether to call the body or the soul feminine. Psychologically, this consideration applies only to the soul as the representative of the body, for the body itself is experienced only indirectly through the soul. The masculine element is spirit. I am in somewhat agreement with that. Like, there are 3 key components, and there is not an understanding of it in this book. And we have already discussed that, but we will hit it again. There's the Trinity. There is the body, the temple of God, the 5D navigation device. There are 5 dimensions that you live in right now. The 5D navigation device. There is the individualized piece of the soul, which is you. It is the part that makes the decisions for the 5D navigation device. It is what says, hey, I want to wiggle my fingers. But you don't actually make that happen. The part that makes that happen is the spirit. It is the active element. It is the logos. It is the change. It is life, light, fire, heat, and motion. And so if you want to wiggle your fingers, you decide to make it happen, and then there is a signal that is sent. That signal is the spirit. It is electrical impulses that shoot through your nerves to your fingers, and it makes them move. The spirit is also the part that keeps your heart beating. It is the part that keeps you breathing. It is the part that digests your food. It is every single instance of movement and change. And it is masculine, but it is also feminine. It is the potential for that change as well. That is one of the major problems, right? The spirit is both masculine and feminine. It is neither, right? It is both and neither at the same time. Masculine and feminine are simply designations that we place upon it so that we can designate it. That doesn't make them true, right? Positive and negative are arbitrary designations as well. We just use that as a designator. But it is possible that it is exactly the opposite, and what we consider positive is actually negative, and what we consider negative is actually positive. These things don't really matter. The point that matters is that it is both. When you pick up a magnet, I've got them on the board back here now. You pick up a magnet, there is a force that goes out and there is a force that comes in, and you can understand that by using 2 of them and snapping them together and then flipping one of them around and repulsing them, right? That is containing both the masculine and the feminine. That is exactly the spirit. The magnetics is the spirit. It is both the potential and the activated. And that is what is missing, that key understanding. That and the ego is your soul on the conscious side of the coin, and then you have a still small voice on the unconscious side that gives you advice. Now, whether that advice is good or bad depends entirely upon which side of that voice that you feed, but it is the inactive part of your own soul. Right? It is the part of your soul that is still connected to the divine. So you receive from the divine that particular message, clouded through the amnesia of consciousness. You hear, you shouldn't do that. And you decide, I'm not going to do that. That's how it works. Or you can decide, yeah, I'm going to do that. Even though the voice is telling you not to. The voice is the divine speaking to you. Your choice coming out of that is entirely up to your conscious side of that. And that is another thing that is not understood by Jung, even though he dove deep into consciousness and unconsciousness. They're trying to separate things that shouldn't be separated, and they're trying to put together things that don't go together. The soul and the spirit are not the same, right? The spirit is quite literally all of existence, so your soul exists inside of the spirit. But it is the designated representative of the divine outside of the spirit. Composed completely of the spirit, the body is fully the spirit. All of the elements in your body came from the spirit, activated by the spirit, and held together by the spirit. The soul is kind of both inside and outside, because it is still related to the divine who exists outside of the creation. That's a little bit complicated, right? It is complicated to get, to lay out, but once you have a grasp of it, it really is so very simple, right? The spirit is every instance of change and everything that change could be made from. The soul doesn't really change. It evolves, so there's a little bit of change, but you're basically the same human, even when you're making better decisions now than you did 20 years ago. Right? Still the same human. You're still the same soul. You've just learned. You haven't changed what your soul is on a fundamental level. Even with the body, right? You can change your body fundamentally. I used to be a fat body, right? I was pushing 250 pounds. Nowadays, I'm between 170 and 180, or between 175 and 185. It fluctuates up and down depending upon the day. It's not that important, right? But the point is that I have drastically changed the physical vessel, but I'm still the same person. This is the same thing, right? Your soul evolves. It is existent inside of the creation, but it is tied outside of the creation at the same time. That is why it is separated. That is why it is not considered part of the spirit. It is fully within the spirit, but it is outside of it as well. And then again, that can be a little bit complicated to understand, but once you can get your mind around that, it really does unlock some doors. And so, right, calling the body or the soul feminine, completely arbitrary. It does not matter. It really doesn't. Your soul can be masculine and feminine. It can, and as a matter of fact, it is literally both, right? You have a masculine side and a feminine side, regardless of who you are. All right, let's get back to the text. All right. As a matter of fact, the queen corresponds to the soul, anima, and the king to spirit, the dominant of consciousness. And again, that is not correct. 428. This is true only of the male artifacts. The situation is reversed in the case of a woman. And no. Right. If it was a true correspondence, then it would not change dependent upon arbitrary mechanics. If, like, I don't even know a good analogy for showing it because it is so outside of the box, right? To say that this thing is this if you're a man, but it's this completely opposite thing if you're a woman is silly, right? At best, right? The queen corresponds to the soul and the king to spirit is completely arbitrary designations made by someone who did not understand the mechanics of it. In view of this interpretation of the queen, we can understand why the secret of the work was sometimes called the Reginae Mysteria. Footnote 429. Thus, Myers says, "He who works through the talent of another and the hand of a hireling will find that his works are estranged from the truth, and conversely, he who performs servile work for another as a servant in the art will never be admitted to the mysteries of the queen." Alright, so he who works through the talent of another in the hand of a hireling will find that his works are estranged from the truth. Yeah, you cannot put your responsibilities upon someone else, right? That is one of my major problems with Christianity in general, like, despite the fact that the reference material is so fundamentally flawed. What you are doing is placing upon someone else your redemption, your reconciliation with the divine. You are requiring, through your decisions, to have an intermediary. There is no need for an intermediary between you and God. If you do so, then your works will be less. That is just simply true. And it is also like, if you want the job done right, what do? You do it yourself, right? If you hire someone else, they might do it right, they might not. That is outside of your scope. Chances are it will not be done in the manner that you want it to. If you want it done in your way, then you need to do it. He who works through the talent of another, the hand of a hireling, will find that his works are estranged from the truth. Yeah, I am in agreement. Conversely, he who performs servile work for another, as a servant in the art, will never be admitted to the mysteries. That is less true. It is true on the level that you cannot remain there, right? But there is a period of learning. There is a period of understanding what is going on, and it is beneficial to be an apprentice, right? To have someone who has the information that can relay the information so that you can understand the information. In real time is better than in past time, right? This is as clear, like, there is a second edition. I am working on it. It's going to be a lot longer than I thought because there's more to add. But you can take this, as flawed as it is, and you can put it into practical application, because I tried to keep it as bare bones as I possibly could. I didn't put in a lot of fluff and all of the filler stuff. It is more dealing with the physical manipulation side of things. But this is the best reference, right? We have not come across anything else that talks about these things in this manner effectively. There may be some, but I haven't found any. But if I had not written this book as an instruction manual, it would definitely be better to come to me than it would be to buy another book. It is still better to come directly to me than it is to go to the book, but that is hard. There's billions of people out there. I am anticipating every single one of you wanting to learn this. It is not going to be possible for me to relay this information to every single person on a personal level. Hence, we do the internet. I can do this, kind of, but not as well as it would be on a face-to-face manner. And so, in part, this is not true, right? It is better to perform servile work for another as a servant of the art until you are familiar enough to take the authority for yourself. That is not casting upon someone else what you should be doing. It is taking upon yourself to use what is available to you in order to get to where you want to be. And that is an entirely different energy, right? This could really be separated into two different footnotes because it is different. On the one hand, it is terrible to hire someone else to do the work. But on the other hand, you have to learn from someone. And so you will be admitted if you take that initiative once you have learned the steps. Now, you will not achieve where I am just simply doing what I tell you to do without anything by yourself. If you are not applying the knowledge, it does you no good. None. Back to the text. The close connection between king and queen is due to the fact that occasionally they both suffer the same fate. She is dissolved with him in the bath. In another version, she is the bath itself. Thus, Eleazar says of the king's bath, "For in this fiery sea the king cannot endure. It robs the old Albion, 430. The prima materia, raw material, black earth, of its strength, and consumes his body and turns it to blood-red blood. Nor is the queen freed. She must perish in this fiery bath." 431. Ultras chemicus work. Once again, it is the same thing, right? The masculine and the feminine, as the spirit, is the same thing. The fiery sea is the masculine side of it. Sure. The feminine side of it is the generative, nurturative, absorptive side. You can look at that as blood, red blood. I mean, we've talked about that already. She must perish in this fiery bath would be the void being penetrated by the light. Further, it is not surprising that king and queen form, as it were, a unity, since they are, in effect, its forerunners, and that it is literally inseparable. And you can look at it differently, but that doesn't mean it is different. The situation becomes worthy of note only because of the interpretation we have given it. True. That in the mythologium of the king, as the dominant of consciousness, it is almost identical with the archetypal figure that personifies the unconscious, namely, the anima. The two figures are in some respects diametrically opposed to one another, as are conscious and unconscious, but just as male and female are united in the human organism, so the psychic material remains the same whether in the conscious or in the unconscious state. Only, sometimes it is associated with the ego, and sometimes not. The anima, in her negative aspect, that is, when she remains unconscious and hidden, exerts a possessive influence on the subject. The chief symptoms of this possession are blind moods and compulsive entanglements on one side, and on the other, cold, unrelated absorption in principles and abstract ideas. The negative aspect of the anima indicates, therefore, a special form of psychological maladjustment. This is either compensated from the conscious side or else it compensates a consciousness already marked by a contrary and equally incorrect attitude. For the negative aspect of the conscious dominant is far from being a God-given idea. It is the most egoistic intention of all, which seeks to play an important role and by wearing some kind of mask to appear as something favorable. Identification with the persona. Now, we talked before, right? There are two voices, or three really. There is your voice inside your head that says, I am going to do this thing. I am making this decision. And then you have the voice that is saying, hey, you should, right? You shouldn't do this. You should do that. That voice is the other side of your consciousness. It is the unconscious part of the divine that is speaking to you with recommendations. It is what Socrates called his demon. Now, Socrates fed the side of the demon that told him the correct things. There is a voice that tells you the correct things, and if you pay attention to that voice, feeding that voice your energy, that voice becomes louder and it is easier to follow. There is another voice that is the exact same voice as that, telling you the opposite. At the same time, it is both the temptation and the ability to resist the temptation. That voice inside your head, you can picture it as an angel and a demon on your shoulders. One telling you, hey, do this thing. And one telling you, hey, don't do this thing. You get to choose which one that you feed. You get to choose which one you decide is correct. You know which one is actually correct, and you know which one is leading you in the wrong way. It is easier to follow the one that is leading you in the wrong way most of the time. That is the one that is telling you, drink too much. That is the one that is telling you, it's all right to cheat on your wife. That's the one that is telling you all of the temptations. And you are meant to resist those. That voice is there. There is the other voice that's telling you, yeah, you don't need to drink that much. It's better to be faithful. That is the positive side, but you get both voices. Whichever one that you feed is the one that you will hear most often, but even when you strengthen one, you will still hear from the other side. That's how it works. And so it is a God-given idea, but it is a God-given idea so that you can resist the temptation. You are always meant to resist the temptation for overindulgence. Every single time, whether that is virtue or vice. And so both sides of that, right? The virtue of greed or the virtue of charity is the opposite of the vice of greed, right? The voice that is speaking in your head that is negative is going to tell you to hold on to all your possessions. You are meant to have everything in the world. You don't need to give this to that person even though they need it. That is going to be the negative voice. But you'll have another voice over here telling you, no, give that person this thing. The problem is that voice will tell you, give away all that you own, right? You are not meant to do that. You are meant to be in the balance. You are meant to have things. Food, clothing, shelter, those are very good things that you are meant to have. Sexual relationships with a sacred union, no? Like, there is a balance to be stricken between all of the virtues and all of the vices. You get to hear both arguments. You get to internally reflect upon which one you, as the ego, decides from the recommendations of your unconscious. And so it is a God-given idea. It may not be a positive one, however. There is discernment for a reason. And you already know. Like, you already know prior to the voice speaking which one is right. You may not choose to follow it. I did not for a long time, right? I came from a life of crime. I sold drugs. I stole from people. I beat people up for fun and profit. I did not make the best choices, but I heard that other voice at that time too. I just chose to feed the negative one. The anima corresponding to this attitude is an intriguer who continually aids and abets the ego in its role, while digging in the background the very pits into which the infatuated ego is destined to fall. But a conscious attitude that renounces its ego-bound intentions, not in imagination only, but in truth, and submits to the supra-personal decrees of fate, can claim to be serving a king. This more exalted attitude raises the status of the anima from that of a temptress to a psychopomp. 432. Come then to highest spheres, conduct him, divining you, he knows the way. Faust 2. Alright, we won't be... we're almost done. The transformation of the kingly substance from a lion into a king has its counterpart, and the transformation of the feminine element from a serpent into a queen. The coronation, apotheosis, and marriage signalize the equal status of conscious and unconscious that become possible at the highest level, a coincidentia oppositorium, with redeeming effects. That would be the balancing that I talk about. It would certainly be desirable if a psychological explanation and clarification could be given of what seems to be indicated by the mythologium of marriage. I've got you. I've got you. Hopefully, let me know down below if I have or not, but I feel like I have given a psychological explanation and clarification what is given by the mythologium of marriage. I feel like I have done that. But the psychologist does not feel responsible for the existence of what cannot be known. As the handmaid of truth, he must be satisfied with establishing the existence of these phenomena, mysterious as they are. The union of conscious and unconscious, symbolized by the royal marriage, is a mythological idea which, on a higher level, assumes the character of a psychological concept. I must expressly emphasize that the psychological concept is definitely not derived from the mythologium, but solely from practical investigation of both the historical and the case material. What this empirical material looks like has been shown in the dream series given in Psychology and Alchemy. It serves as a paradigm in place of hundreds of examples, and it may therefore be regarded as more than an individual curiosity. The psychological union of opposites is an intuitive idea which covers the phenomenology of this process. It is not an explanatory hypothesis for something that, by definition, transcends our powers of conception. For, when we say that conscious and unconscious unite, we are saying in effect that this process is inconceivable. No, I am not. The unconscious is, and to a degree, right, to bring back the pen analogy from yesterday, this is conscious, this is unconscious. It is a sliding scale. You are normally more unconscious than you are conscious, but through the things that I describe in this book and some of the things that we have discovered in this study, you can take it from here and you can drag it down more towards the unconscious. You will never fully integrate the unconscious. And so, in part, this is correct. The conscious and the unconscious don't unite, but the conscious becomes more dominant by you making conscious decisions about the things that you used to leave to the unconscious. The unconscious is unconscious and therefore can neither be grasped nor conceived. I disagree heartily. I believe that I have done so. The union of opposites is a transconscious process and, in principle, not amenable to scientific explanation. I don't agree with that. The marriage must remain the mystery of the queen, the secret of the art, of which the Rosarium reports King Solomon as saying, "This is my daughter, for whose sake men say that the Queen of the South came out of the East, like the rising dawn, in order to hear, understand, and behold the wisdom of Solomon. Power, honor, strength, and dominion are given into her hands. She wears the royal crown of 7 glittering stars." 7, you say? 7? 7? Like a bride adorned for her husband, and on her robe is writing in golden lettering, in Greek, Arabic, and Latin, "I am the only daughter of the wise, utterly unknown to the foolish." 433 is a reference to something else, I believe. Yeah. It is important to note, right, this is from Solomon. I am assuming that it is from the Bible. I am not positive that it is, but we'll assume that, right? No, it's not. Rosarium is not the Bible. Okay. So it is in Greek, Arabic, and Latin. It is important to note that it is not in Hebrew, right? Solomon was definitely pre-Greek. Arabic, that's going to be a harder one, right? Because the area was Saudi Arabia. Arabic is the derivative for that. And so it has been peopled by the Arabic peoples for an exceedingly long time. But Latin also was a more recent influence for Solomon, right? Neither Greek nor Latin would have been spoken in Israel at the time of Solomon. That is an important thing to note. Power, honor, and strength and dominion are given into her hand. She wears the royal crown of 7 glittering stars, Arabic, Greek, and Latin. I am the only daughter of the wise, utterly unknown to the foolish. The Queen of Sheba, wisdom, the royal art, and the daughter of the philosophers are all so interfused that the underlying psychologium clearly emerges. The art is Queen of the alchemist's heart. She is at once his mother, his daughter, and his beloved. And in his art and its allegories, the drama of his own soul, his individuation process is played out. And I do not disagree with that either. Right? It is in the process that your individualization does indeed play out. And that's going to bring us to the end of Regina. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult series of topics. I understand that I do hold some unconventional beliefs, and I do have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but it is not something that I apologize for. I feel like I have accomplished Jung's goal in this. Now, that is an incredibly prideful thing to say, and I do not mean it in that manner, right? I have been gifted with a gift of discernment. I have been gifted with an ability to see things in a slightly different light than most people do. To be able to relay even that information in a way that is somewhat beneficial for other people. And so when I say that I feel like I have explained the psychosis of the unconscious, I feel like I did. Right now, I may not be entirely correct, but it is definitely enough to get a grip on understanding your unconscious and coming to terms with it and becoming the master of it. I do believe that because I have done that, right? My unconscious is very much under my control these days. I mean, there are parts, yes, but for the most part, I am in pretty full control of those things, right? I don't have the tendency towards despair at all anymore. I don't have the tendency towards anxiety anymore. I don't have the tendency towards jealousy or rage or any of the things anymore. It really is something that I have taken a hold of in my own life and changed myself physically, emotionally, and spiritually. That is the information that I am trying to relay, right? I'm not here to cast confusion. I'm not here to give aspersions, although that sometimes is part of the process. See Aleister Crowley. Those aren't the important parts, right? The dividing of the meat from the milk, that is important. The parts that are true and untrue, that's important. And I feel like I have done a fairly good job of it. Right now, I'm not asking you to tell me, yes, Pitt, you've done a great job, right? I feel like the people that are coming in consistently, and it is only a few of you, that is for reasons, right? Though the people that are coming consistently are able to pull out the meat, right? That's what my feeling of it is. I feel like what I am doing is beneficial to humanity, right? I am taking these concepts and going in directions that most people, even if they are able to conceptualize, won't say, right? One of my major peccadillos, right? Well, I'm an INFJ, right? And that is a big deal, a big part of who I am, right? The second part of that, the part that I feel responsible for, is how other people feel about the situation. Making sure that everybody is comfortable is a high priority for me. And so for me to be here doing what I'm doing, which is definitely bringing uncomfort to people, it is more important that I follow the divine than I follow my parent. And the divine function is this idea correct? Does it fit through logical progression into something that is true? Now, that doesn't mean that it is true. It means that it aligns with the truth. It means that it is close to the truth. That is what I am trying to do. I am trying to give as much meat as I possibly can. And the more I do this, the more that we go through these, the more firm that foundation becomes, the better I am able to express those ideas. And so that's why we're here. That's why we're doing these studies. Right? There will come a time possibly where we're no longer doing them. Right? We're going to dive into some pretty heavy stuff. Right? We're going back to some source material after this one. Like I was going to go back to Jung. We're probably going to go do the theatrical chemicum. And that is going to be a whole thing. So anyway, that's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I don't feel like I have a whole lot to add. Right? I feel like I'm explaining well enough that I don't have to explain at the end. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment. Whether you agree or disagree with anything that was stated, put it in the box, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If you really like what I'm doing over here, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership, picking up a copy of my book, or using any of the links down below to either support the channel or reach out directly to me. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are. And this has been pittstake. Peace.